Dear all, I would like to introduce the panelists. First of all, Ursula von der Leyen, Germany's Federal Minister of Labor and Social Affairs. Please. She is known for being in favor of legally binding gender quotas for men and women, not just for women. The next panelist is Gina Land. Gina, please come on stage. Gina was a state secretary of labor in the Norwegian government who introduced legally binding gender quotas in Norway, so she has first-hand experience on the topic. And our third panelist is Antonella Mei-Pochtler, a senior partner and managing director with the Boston Consulting Group in Austria, and she has been known to be against legally binding quotas. So welcome on stage. So first of all, I'm really curious, so we know what the audience is thinking. Can we have a show of hands who is in favor of legally binding gender quotas in Germany? Okay, and who is against it? Yeah, so we have a mixed audience. Now, let me just summarize the situation that we have for you. So as you know, there's an ongoing debate, has been an ongoing debate for many years in Germany and Europe about introducing legally binding quotas in supervisory boards in publicly listed firms. And so far, there's no such regulation European-wide, and there's no such laws in Germany. But a few single countries in Europe have gone ahead and implemented measures, such as Norway, France, Italy, Belgium. And the question is, will Germany and will Europe follow, and is it generally a success story to advance with this? What I thought, let me share with you what I thought when I heard about this panel. Yeah. Well, I read about the panel earlier, but we all know DLD is an innovative and very much future-oriented conference, and I asked myself, and maybe many of you did as well, why do we still talk about a topic that we talked about 3 years ago? Obviously, it's necessary. You are all here, you are interested, but I would like to start the panel by asking the panelists, why is the topic of gender quota still important, and what is their personal motivation behind it, starting with Ursula von der Leyen?
Yes, plain and simply because things are moving forward too slowly. And it's not only 3 years we're debating about that. When I became a medical doctor 25 years ago, the women in the studies were already the majority. At that time, I've heard the story, you are so many talented women in medicine, you will make your way. At that time, 25 years ago, we had 2% of C4 professorship in medicine. 25 years later, I've seen the long, long way we've all gone. And don't tell me we do not need medical doctors. Don't tell me women as medical doctors are not very, very good. We have now 6% of female professors in C4 positions. This is too slow. And that's the reason why we need the quota to just improve and fasten the process. 10 years ago, there was a voluntary agreement in the economy in Germany with politics. And both sides committed themselves. Politics said we're going to improve things, and they have to be improved, reconciliation of work and family. And business sector said we're going to improve things. What happened? Small and medium companies today, they have 30% women in leading positions. They fulfilled their homework. And in politics, you know that, Ganztagsschule, there is no word in English for that because we have a part-time school in Germany. Well, Ganztagsschulprogramm, childcare, parental payment, Father's Month, a lot changed. We were so angry 2 years ago because after 10 years of voluntary agreement, almost nothing had changed in the big company where wealth, money, and power is connected. There had always been, almost been no change. And therefore we say, we need a quota now so that we fasten up with things to have a change.
And your personal motivation?
It's anger. Yes. I've seen so many talented women around me. And I think we really have to change around the question. What is the reason that in a certain area, supervisory and executive boards in listed large companies, what is the reason why these companies are not able to nominate women for these jobs? They are capable, the women. They are there. Don't tell me we aren't there. We are here, obviously. They can do the job. You've seen it in politics. You have seen it in small and medium enterprises. You've seen it in many, many different fields. So there must be a structural problem. I would not say it's because people are mean and don't want to have women. I think it's because there is a deep feeling that you want to recruit the type you are yourself. So men are choosing men that are very similar, very similar. But today, this is not a criteria anymore. If you want to be successful, you need a diverse team at the top. You need a diverse look at the risks. I mean, many things we've seen in the past, over the last years, in the business sectors have happened because people in the decision positions took risks that were very homogeneous. In Germany, we have a word of saying, I can't translate, which is ein Klumpenrisiko, was aufgetreten ist. So most of the Germans will understand it. If you have a very homogeneous look at the things, you take, of course, a homogeneous risk. And we've seen what happened then. So therefore, I think women are not better. They are different, and we need the different look at things.
Gina Land, Norway was the first country to introduce gender quotas. Why has Norway done that, and what were the positive and the negative effects of this policy measure?
Yeah, is this working? Yeah, I'd like to start with answering the first question you had. That was actually why are we still debating it? And I wanted to tell you that we had the quotas 10 years ago, and we're not debating it anymore. But when we had them, we debated them for 25 years before getting them. It took us 25 years. We had a situation when we have been working since the beginning of the 70s with different projects, establishing female future, female values, databases in the end of the 80s for female candidates. The employers' organizations told us that there will not be enough women. This is harakiri for Norwegian business. The investor will run away from the Oslo stock market if you start with quotas. We have never had so many investors at the stock market in Oslo as we have today. Institutional investors. We have 40% in the listed companies after 10 years with quotas. The 25 years before those 10 years was a percentage of women between 3.5% and 5%. So you can like quota or not, to those of you who said you were against quotas, okay, but give me the alternatives. I tell you, the Nordic country tried so many alternatives, and we did it for 2 decades. The results were 0. No, we have the results. And why am I motivated for this? It's 3 reasons. I think this debate is a debate about what is right from a view, from my values, what is good for the society. And I believe in a society that is able to use all the resources that it has. And I believe in a society where people have the right to participate and where we use the potential in all people. I think politicians' main task is to make people more happy. I do think that joy and happiness is what you should give to the German population, and half of the population happens to be female, so they should be involved. And then I think on an individual level, I want to use my resources, and I want my daughter to be able to use her resources. And I have seen that my grandmother did not get the possibilities that my mother got, and I have gotten a better situation than her, and this is due to the willingness in a society to do legislation and to do laws on things that are controversial. And then the last thing is, it's good for businesses. So it's both society's perspective, the individual perspective, the female perspective, and the business perspective. The businesses, this Athena doctrine that we heard about earlier today, he said that feminine values is ruling future business. Why shouldn't we let female resources be there in originals? Why should we focus on letting men learn female values? We should do that too, but we can use also the originals. So I think it's obvious.
So Mrs. Mei-Pochtler, if we listen to Minister von der Leyen and Gina Land, that seems to be benefit for everyone, and there seems to be no alternative. I know that you may have a different view, so please share your personal motivation and your thinking on this issue with us.
They're very convincing, both of them, aren't they? No, I think that we have total unity in terms of what the goal is. And the goal has to be to have a stronger representation of women in all parts of society, and I can talk particularly for companies. We know that women are underrepresented at all levels, and particularly at management level. If you think, just German numbers, figures, 15% of supervisory board, Aufsichtsräte, have women. Only 50% of women are part of the supervisory board. There are approximately 1,600 supervisory board members, and only 15% are women. And if you look a little bit deeper and you look at the structure, then you see that most of them, the higher share, is representative from the workers, from the workers' council, and not from the capital part, which is, of course, gives you a certain bias. And if you go one level deeper and look who is in the nominating committees, and I think that is very, very relevant, then that is only 7%. So only 7% of all the supervisory board members have an influence on who is being hired, recruited for board position. Then we go at the level of the boards, executive board members. It's only 6% of the executive board members are women. So no question about it that women are underrepresented. But the issue is the problem of the leaking pipeline. There are women who are starting, and if you think, and I can talk also from our experience, we are hiring, around 30%, 35% women. Why do we only have 10% female partners at the top? Believe me, we would like to have significantly more. I personally would like to have many more, It's just that we lose them on the way up, and we need to understand why is the pipeline leaking.
Do you understand it?
Yeah. And we really try to get a deeper transparency about what is going on between the beginning and the end. Why do we lose them? Yeah. And I think that we need to see that there are 3 concentric circles that we have to address. The outer circle is the circle of society. What can society do to make it more appealing and more acceptable for women to engage in a career? And that circle, and I think you are doing a lot of, both of you have been doing a lot of great stuff to make the conditions better. And that is, of course, very much in the hand of politics, but it's also in the hand of companies, because, as Mr. Maucher, the head of Nestle, always said, more has been done for emancipation by having nappies and baby formula than by doing other stuff. So, taking away some of the burden from women is a big advantage. So in this outer circle, you can do a lot to make it easier for women to go into careers, but it has to do with a lot of structural things. It's kindergartens, but it's also making sure that you have men participating more in the household chores. So that's the outer circle.
Can I just intervene, because we have some very concrete suggestions here. What do you suggest concretely governments can do? Because I read in the BCG report that BCG says, well, the most important thing is to promote appropriate solutions. That's very abstract. What is an appropriate solution?
I will come to the second circle, and that is so outer circle you can do a lot, but that will not change things. The second circle is the companies themselves, and I think that companies can do a lot. And there we agree about the goal of getting more women, but we disagree about the road to it. So there are different. I'm from Rome. There are different roads to Rome. You suggest quotas. I think.
What do you suggest instead of quotas?
It's quite important to have binding KPIs. And I think we have Claudia Nehmer there from Telecom, I see her. And what the Telecom has been doing, I think, is one way to go, which is really thinking, in the company, how to break the glass ceiling from bottom up, just making
But voluntary KPIs. You suggest voluntary KPIs, okay.
which are really suited to the company. So for a BMW, because we are in Munich, the KPIs will be different from or EADS than compared to GFK, which has a higher female. So you need to have voluntary KPIs and have a very clear binding, you have to have binding KPIs, which the supervisory board and the investors are controlling. And I don't believe that giving even more rules, from politics to companies is making companies more effective, more competitive. I think that the biggest motivation for a company in the second circle is really competitiveness. And let me come just for a second to the third circle, because I think that we need to address that, and a little bit has been addressed already before, which is ourselves, The inner circle, the third circle is, do we want to do it? And we all have read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. Are women leaning in enough? I think that a lot of women, younger women, really want to lean in. And I think that we need to give them some reinforcement. We need to give them the reinforcement that they should not fulfill the stereotypes that have been projected from the very beginning to them, but they should be really enjoying the fact of making a career. And a lot of people say, when you are at the top, you are not liked and so on. This is nonsense. I mean, I think that neither Marissa Mayer nor Sheryl Sandberg are not liked. People envy them, they like them, and I don't think that that is really the reason. So I think it's highly attractive to do a career and to become boss.
Question, Minister von der Leyen, what do you reply? You must have had that discussion many times.
Well, in general, Antonella, everything is right what you said. The problem is we've had the same discussions 25 years ago. And we are getting tired. We want to see results. And I think this is the language business understands. We want to see results. And therefore, the smart part about the quota is, if we introduce a law right now, after the election, that we're going to have a quota of 30% women on supervisory boards in 2020, the message is clear to the business sector. Cherchez la femme. Get out and get the best women you can have. What I experienced 2 years ago when I started with the discussion about the quota was really shocking. I thought industry would say, yes, wonderful, we're going to work on it. The reaction was they told me why it is not possible to have women on boards. They have too many children, reconciliation of work and family is not okay. Everything's right. But these were not the real reasons, because if reconciliation of work and family wouldn't be at best in Germany, which is true, the boards should be filled with women without children. This is not the case. Then the next thing I was told was, you need the engineering studies to be in a steel company or an automotive company. Well, let's have a look at banks and insurances. You do not need to study engineering. It's enough to be an economist or to have studied law. So all these excuses, they were telling me why it is not possible to have the women on board. But the second sentence was always, but wait, in another 10 to 15 to 20 years, you'll see automatically women will be at the place. And that's the only thing where we are apart. I do not believe in these promises anymore. I think we need clear numbers, clear goals. That's the language business understands.
Antonella Mei-Pochtler. A short... I want from you a short and convincing sort of statement, because you signaled that you disagree. What is the reason that you disagree?
I disagree because supervisory board quotas don't change anything in the companies. A supervisory board that meets 4 times a year will not require, for even if you have 30% women, a corporate kindergarten, for example, because supervisory boards are not managing the company, they are supervising the companies. So this is it sounds like a good measure, it sounds like a silver bullet, but it's addressing an effect and not the profound reasons. And so we need to go to the root causes of things. I know that it's much more difficult to address the root causes, and there is not a simple KPI.
I will come back to the root
one
cause.
example.
But
Yes, may I give you one number, and then it's Gina's turn. I know, sorry.
And then I asked Norway about the experience in Norway.
Look at politics. 100 years ago, Weimarer Republik, almost. In the first parliament, we had 9% women. It took 65 years, till the mid-80s, to have 10% women in the parliament. Then the quotas came to the parties. I do not say that a quota does make a good politician, neither female nor male, but the quotas came. Today we have a female chancellor and we have many female ministers in the cabinet, and I'm sure this wouldn't be the case if we wouldn't have had the quotas in the parties. So it's a tool to improve, it's a tool to fasten up things. It's not all, but it's necessary really to have a change at the very end.
So I would like to ask Gina Land about the sort of negative effects and maybe what wasn't a complete success in Norway. We heard here that supervisory boards or the gender composition on supervisory boards does not necessarily affect CEO and management positions and middle management. What is the situation in Norway? I read a recent report by the European Women's Lobby that says the number of female CEOs and chairpeople has not increased in Norway. And so is the next step to have a law in place to have legally binding quotas for all levels of the board? What's the plan in Norway?
That's very interesting. And I want to say first that the quota is not the goal. The quota is a tool. The quota is not a quick fix. It's not going to solve all the problems. And I agree actually with you in that you have the outer circle the way you described it. And that is the political level that needs to make it possible for female participation in general. We thought when we had the quota, well, we were told that there will not be enough women. The women will not be good enough qualified. Business will be going down the drain. And there's going to be very conflictive situations in a lot of boards. This showed out to be not right. There are women in Norway. They are qualified. More than half of the qualified graduate that goes out of the university are women in whole Europe today. So this has not been the problem. What has been the problem is that the quota has not had such an effect as we thought it would have on the administrative management and the leadership in the businesses in general. Mm-hmm. So even though we have a 40% representation of female in board, we have not seen the increasing of the top management in private businesses. And this is the big debate we have now. What other tools can we use? So we are going further on this to see what other tools can there be. And again,
for example,
there have been discussions about whether some of the people who are being board members, being female board members, have been not being enough female for being in the critical mass. There have been 3 huge investigations, one of them in the US. I think one was, and I have them in my bag there, and I read them the other day, and it's very interesting, saying that 1 woman in the board will not make the big difference. Mm-hmm. Neither will 2. They have really good chance to see the critical mass is that they need to be a group representing this. And then there also is a proposal inside of some of the parties in the government to extend the quota system on private small businesses. This is very controversial in Norway because this is small family-driven companies. And we have a discussion about how to get the middle leaders, those in your middle management, in getting them having better systems and qualification systems around them. I'm not saying this is an easy fix, but I'm saying it's the willingness to do the tool. Because all experience shows that if you're not willing to use tools, you will not gain results.
Mrs. Mei-Pochtler, you mentioned that quotas will not get to the root cause. What is the root cause, in your opinion?
I think that the root causes have to do with the 3 circles that I mentioned, but one of the major root causes is what are the selection criteria and the cultures in the companies. Okay. And I think that these are two fundamental root causes that we need to address.
Yeah.
So the selection criteria very often are male-defined, and according to the male-defined selection criteria,
can you give an example?
Like for example, that you need to have a certain aggressive behavior, and it was mentioned before, versus cooperative behavior, which is something that normally in the repertoire of management behaviors is something that women are particularly, are leaning to more. So this is one of the criteria. Some other criteria are presence culture in a company. This is some other topics are presence culture. I mean, if you have a presence culture, it becomes much less compatible with a family perspective. So there are some cultural and some internal facts. And the interesting thing, we analyzed 60 companies in Germany about why is the pipeline leaking. And it was very interesting. When you asked before, did the interviews, the male manager said, well, we are losing the women because of the work-life balance, because they have a family issue. When you asked women, why they left, it has nothing to do with the work-life balance. It had to do with the feeling of the culture of being, not productive for them, not being taken serious in meetings, not being put on the key projects. So it had to do a lot with cultural factors. Now, how do you tackle that?
Exactly.
How do you tackle
Concretely.
that? You don't tackle that by having 3 people in the supervisory board who don't even know what the culture is in the company. You tackled it only if you make it binding, if you make binding KPIs, and if you change the corporate governance codex, for example, to take one in Germany. The corporate governance codex just speaks about the quota at the supervisory board. Why don't we put in the corporate governance codex that every company needs to have transparency about recruitment targets, retention targets, and development investments in women, and then you have the Lebensmittelkarte, where you have how many calories does that have. You see for every company, how does the company perform according to this guidance, and then we ask here our colleagues here, in which company do they go? Well, I'm certainly going to a company which has a more producive or more productive environment for women. But that, and then you walk, you decide with the feet. You go where you think that you can perform better.
So legally binding KPIs. So if you must like that suggestion, I guess.
Well, we've tried to introduce a scheme where business companies have to show what their internal goals are. And it was interesting to see because it started at the definition, what is a leading position? What is the percentage of leading positions, or the proportion of leading positions of all the positions in the company? Some companies said 1% of our positions are leading positions. Others said, well, 25%. For example, the leader of the kindergarten of the business is, of course, a leading position. At that point already, you had such a heterogeneous picture of goals that were not relevant and not binding, that I will not say that it doesn't work as you said. But I think at the very end, you need a goal that is clear. In 2020, that's the only effect the quota has, to give the clear message, you better get ready to change something in your company, otherwise you're going to have a huge problem in 2020, 6 years from now. And let me give you one example. We did the same technique politically, the same technique with the kindergarten childcare. We introduced a law 6 years ago that said, in 6 years, in the year 2013, every child has a right to have a childcare place when it's 1 year old. 6 years ago, everybody said, this is impossible, that won't work. Now we have the year 2013 and it's gonna happen. The right will be there. And of course, things moved on very much faster than they would have happened without that law. That's the only reason why the quota is right, I think, to put a clear message, you have 6 years' time, you better get ready.
Yeah. I would like to take up the notion that for top management positions, we heard, you need both ability, qualifications, experience, but you also need the motivation to pursue it. So we've heard from all of you that maybe both, maybe one or two is lacking. What is sort of the greater challenge also for governments to work on the qualification and ability? As you mentioned, the pipeline is not there, not enough experienced women in order to climb the corporate ladder, or is it really a motivational problem? And if it is motivation, what can governments do about that?
It's both. Of course, I mean, being a boss myself, I know you have chercher la femme, you have to search for the talented women, and you have to go there and you have to tell them, I believe in you, you can do it, I'm sure. And even with your 2 or 3 children, you can do it because we're going to arrange things. Often, these women at the beginning say, are you sure about that? And say, yes, I believe in you. So the way you address women, the way you encourage them, also because I want to meet my internal goals is very important. But of course you need infrastructure, you need childcare, of course you need flexible working hours, of course you need a change in the culture in your company. And what you need is a completely different culture what the father is concerned, because children do have fathers too. And the child has a right to have time with his mother, but it has also a right to have time with his father. And if you change that attitude in the company towards the fathers and their duties at home, you divide the time. You need time for caring for the kids and the elderly, and you need time for a good job, a career you have. But this is a right both have, men and women. And this is an attitude of a company you have really to decline from one side to the next.
So I just wanted to come back to the fact that you said it's difficult to define what is a management position. It's quite easy, actually, you know. You can define C, C-1, C-2. C is CEO, -1, -2. This is something that you can measure, and you can make transparent, you know, how many women are at the C level, C-1, C-2 level. This is something that can be communicated. It can be, you know, it is an indicator, and it's a much more relevant indicator compared to the supervisory board, where we see the example of Norway shows, I mean, they are much more advanced. It shows that in Norway, it didn't change. I mean, you have 35% quotas in supervisory board, but the executive board didn't change, while in Finland, where you don't have quotas, you have a much higher level of executive board members, which are women. So I'm wondering if it's really a road to Rome, the quota, or if it's rather a detour, and something that and that is my personal concern, knowing a lot of managers. People might think once we have, you know, when we have the checkbox, you know, we have achieved the quota, the 30%, we are done. And the issue is it lures you in believing that you have really addressed the fundamental issues. But the fundamental issues have not been addressed, and actually they are very much in what you said, which have to do participation of men in the daily course. I mean, why don't we make parental leave something which is a given, that people can go? I mean, in Belgium, they are testing now, and I think that's quite an interesting thing, you know. Once you define that people can take a leave without saying why the reasons for it, you know, is it for parental or for other reasons, then men take more leaves than if they have to say it's because of the childcare. So I think that we need to create incentives for a stronger participation of men to take over some of the duties. So we agree on that. Kindergarten, another thing. But I don't think that, I think that we need to, there is no silver bullet. You need to go through the hard way of addressing the root causes.
Yeah. In a way, we see it's a complex topic, and in a way, a never-ending topic. And the last question for all panelists I would like to ask is, if we look into the future, and if we imagine we meet again in this setting on this topic in 5 years, what will have changed in Germany and Europe with regard to gender quotas in 5 years?
Well, we will be close to the date where 30% of supervisory board members have to be women. And there has been a lot of excitement about how to do it, but this is over now because we discovered there are a lot of talented and qualified women out there. They can do it.
Okay.
And I think that in 5 years, you will invite me back, and I will tell you about the male participation in households in Norway, the time consuming that men are using in the kitchen and in raising kids. And I will also tell you that the quota was not the quick fix, but the quota has been, we didn't do any more legalization, but the quota has now been giving a big impact. The first 10 years was the starting up period, but after these 10 years, we saw a flux going towards management in businesses. And we will still have 16% higher participation than some of the European countries, but I do believe that Germany will find that they cannot afford it in the long run, not using the resources. So you will be getting closer, I hope.
So I'm an optimist, and I feel in 5 years from now, most of the real strong companies that we have in Germany will have committed to, to a similar system as the Deutsche Telekom, committed to increasing the participation of women in the top deciding committees. And we will see that they need to do it if we want to attract this fantastic group of people. And I think that we will see many of the ladies here in the room being board members in important companies.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the panelists and the audience for a great session.